Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thank you for coming to watch. So, if you guys an update on some very active storm systems that are really going to get going here across the United States as we get into January and the new year. And we're also going to be talking about a big clipper system that is actually visible on radar. All right, as you can see, we are already dealing with a lot of snowfall here, impacting portions of Minnesota. This is moving through St. Paul, the Twin Cities. All right, this is going to be moving down through Wisconsin, Iowa. All right, it's going to be bringing a few inches of snow to some areas. I got an update on all that coming right up. All right, so taking a look here again at our current radar, we got nothing much going on other than that one clipper system that right now is pretty much moving in this general direction. It's moving pretty much to the southeast. So that's going to come in and bring some snowfall into portions of the Midwest, and then off to the northeast, we're also going to see a rain-snow mix. All right. For the interior northeast on the coastline, we may see some snow flurries from the system, but it's mainly going to be for the northeast where we see all that snow. A little bit of rain left over from our big system here in the Pacific Northwest, but that's not really going to be impacting too many areas, and that's not going to be really causing any big problems. So move over here to our alerts. And so, starting out here in the north, we can see we have many winter weather advisories. All right, we're not going to be seeing any winter storm watches or warnings because this is not a significant event. But we do have those winter weather advisories in place for those areas that will be dealing with some snowfall going out for portions of eastern Minnesota, really down through all of Wisconsin here, and then into portions of eastern Iowa and then northern Illinois. All right, we've got down here into Florida freeze warnings. Those freeze watches were actually upgraded today. All right, so now we will definitely be getting well below that 32-degree line, and any liquid or just any water that is on any surfaces will definitely freeze over tonight here, and we can actually see we have in this blue shade, it appears that we actually do have. Let me look. Sorry, guys, I actually can't figure this out. We have a frost advisory. All right, so we have a freeze warning in the dark purple, and then a frost advisory in that blue shade. All right, so that's going to be pretty much it for our alerts. We're going to be moving on to the North Central United States here, or the Midwest, I should say, and we're talking about this big clipper system. All right. So one thing I also wanted to say, I apologize for the length of the video yesterday. That was actually the longest video I've ever made. And so I apologize about that being so long. I'm going to try and shorten this one up a little bit. All right, but talking about your clipper system, well, here it is. You got a 1,009 millibar low pressure. You don't usually see that many strong clippers through the winter. Some will get sub 1,000 barely, but this one's going to be just your typical clipper. And just getting through the rest of tonight, we can see just a lot of scattered snow flurries moving through the border of Minnesota and Wisconsin. But watch as the snow gets a little bit more widespread and a little bit more substantial getting into tomorrow morning. Here it is, right around that low pressure center. All right, we're starting to see a little bit of a heavier lake effect snow band starting to move its way over the Great Lakes and off to the east, where we're going to start to see portions of Ohio, and then PA start to be impacted by that snowfall. All right, but if you're off to the west here into portions of northern Illinois, northern Indiana, and then into southern Wisconsin, you could definitely still be dealing with some light to moderate snowfall, and then maybe even some heavy snowfall at times. All right, but this low pressure center will quickly develop here. We actually get a little bit more of a storm system, and we're actually starting to see some of that rainfall or some of that snowfall change over to rain because we still got some warm weather or warm air nearby. All right, so that's actually going to change some of that lake effect snow to lake effect rain. All right, as the storm system pushes off to the east. All right, and we're 42 hours out, so we're getting to about Monday here. All right, so this would be Sunday here. This is tomorrow here. We're starting to see more. Again, we're starting to see more of the substantial snow tomorrow night. All right, but then getting into Monday, that's when the system will be exiting the region and moving off into the northeast. All right, so as far as snowfall totals go, all right, nothing too crazy. nothing that you guys haven't seen. All right, starting out here in Wisconsin and into portions of Minnesota, we could see really barely any snow into Minnesota, but into Wisconsin, maybe in portions of northern Wisconsin, down off to the east here, we could really expect 1 to 2 inches with maybe some higher amounts like barely 3 inches of snow. But I think really 1 to 2 inches is what you could expect. The rest of the state really not seeing any snow, maybe a little dusting. All right, but yeah, you could definitely see up to an inch, even as far north as the UP of Michigan. All right, down into northern Illinois, we're talking about 1 to 3 inches of snow for sure. Central Illinois, I don't think you guys are going to see any snow from this, and definitely no snow for southern Illinois. In the portions of Indiana, this is where we're probably going to see the heaviest snow. As far as the Midwest goes here, we can see really 2 to 4 inches of snow for this portion of northern Indiana, and then really 1 to 2 inches if you're off to the east of there. And then for the rest of the state, really up to an inch of snow is what you could expect. Southern Michigan, though, I think 1 to 3 inches is what you could expect, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw similar amounts in northern Michigan, because I think that lake effect snow band could actually get going a little bit earlier, and that could bring a few additional inches of snow, but talking really 1 to 2 inches. Same thing for Ohio, but eastern Ohio, we saw that the more substantial snowfall, that bigger snow band move through. Well, the NAM is picking up on 3 inches of snow. All right, for you guys, so maybe a quick hitting winter storm for you guys that would bring really just a few inches of snow. I don't think this is going to cause travel delays. Actually, it's going to be pretty nice, just getting a few inches of snow. All right, I don't think this is going to be really plowable snow. All right, for most of you guys, but a dusting to an inch for really everybody at least, but some areas in particular here could be dealing with over an inch or two of snow. All right, so moving on to the Northeast, we look at what's going to be happening after that system moves out of the Midwest. We see we'll take this out to Monday here. So we're getting into Monday. We're getting to the wee morning hours of Monday here. The system is moving in. All right, we could be dealing with snow as far east as southern New England, maybe New York City. If we'll see what happens here with the forecast, because this has changed a little bit. But if the snow band positions farther south, I think New York City and Long Island could be dealing with snow. But snow as far east as southern New England. All right, but the main band here is really going to be impacting portions of northern PA. That's where we see the heaviest snow, and then also into portions of eastern Ohio, but portions of West Virginia as well. The mountains of West Virginia could deal with some snow, some rainfall though. All right, into portions of West Virginia, and then into southeastern Pennsylvania, into the Philadelphia area, we could be dealing with some rainfall. That will move into New Jersey. But this snow will stay with us for the remainder of Monday into Tuesday, with some leftover snow flurries, and then that system exits the Northeast, or just is basically just going to fizzle out. All right, but we look at the snow. Well, actually, let me go back here. Let me look at the snowfall totals for the Northeast. I apologize. I think I accidentally deleted that tab. All right. So let's get this up. We'll pull this up really quick. All right. So we're gonna be taking a look at the current projected snowfall totals on the NAM. All right, for the Northeast, and I think that we're gonna see similar amounts here. And we take this out. We'll take this out to as far out as this goes. We'll put this out. We'll switch to the 18Z. Sorry about that, guys. All right, there we go. All right, let's get this rolling. All right, so we're going 84 hours out, and you can see really no measurable snow, unless you're in the interior Northeast here. But the NAM wants more snow in the Northeast. All right, we're talking about maybe 2 to 4 inches of snow for areas near the border of upstate New York and portions of Western PA down through the rest of Western PA. Really, northwestern PA is where you see the heavy snow, but the rest of Western Pennsylvania, we see really 1 to 3 inches, but also down here into southwestern PA, now we see up to 4 inches of snow. And this is going to be mountain snow, guys, but for the upper elevations of West Virginia, the NAM is really trying to tug on these snowfall totals, and we're talking about maybe 5-6 inches of snow for the upper elevations of West Virginia. So a little bit of a snowfall event for you guys. All right, but again, into Ohio, I really do think that the eastern portion of Ohio will be dealing with over 2 inches of snow here. All right, but into central New York State, up to an inch or so of snow, maybe an inch and a half in some areas. Same thing for portions of central PA. Down to southern New England, all right, we don't really see any signal for an inch, so maybe a light dusting or just a very light flurry. All right, and that goes really for the same for areas up into Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and then the rest of New York State here. All right, but this entire area I could definitely see around a dusting to an inch of snow, and then some areas again will see those higher amounts. All right, so for the second half of the update, really, we're going to be talking about this big pattern change that everyone's been talking about and I've been talking about lately here. All right, and as you know, the models have been picking up on a potentially a very active January coming up, and I want to give you guys a no hype, just a factual video, just an update on what actually will be happening here in the future. So taking a look at the European model, we're looking at our high anomalies, taking a look at where our region could be, also those warmer temperatures, and then the troughing, which is basically the troughing is basically storminess. All right, that's what we mean by troughing. That's signaled in the in the cooler colors, and in the warmer colors we see ridging, which means high pressure and drier, more mild conditions. All right, so we're going out. We're going out. Basically, this is for the rest of the weekend. We're getting to Monday here. All right, and then we see a pretty good dip in the jet stream with a trough coming through the Midwest. Okay, and then that moves into the Northeast, and we are actually dealing with here a very tall ridge building up into portions of Western Canada, but we're starting to see more of that active storm track starting to take shape. That's going to be a crucial point in our weather as we get into January. I think we're going to start to see this big storm track here in the Pacific. It's going to become amplified like an El Nino, typical El Nino, and we actually are seeing that big setup here in El Nino, where we get warmer than average conditions here in the northern U.S. And then we're dealing with storminess, and this would probably bring cooler temperatures in the south. All right, but notice how this quickly changes as we get into farther into January. All right, look at this big dip in the jet stream here. This is your jet stream within this blue line. All right, notice how we've got a ridge still building into portions of Canada, but a big dip in the jet stream coming down here through the Midwest. That's going to allow for maybe some cooler temperatures if we have that cold source that is still open, which would be the polar vortex. That could definitely allow for some cold air to flow in. All right, and we're getting it to about January the 6th. All right, so we're getting pretty far out. We're getting 150 hours out, so we're not, out into La La Land yet, but we're getting pretty far out. And the GFS is signaling a very big trough here coming through the eastern U.S., so that's signaling a big storm system to come in. We see very deep troughing coming up here, around, negative 270 meters here. I'm pretty sure that's what we're talking about. All right, but that moves on out, and we just see a lot of storminess coming in, and even into Canada, we're actually dealing with more storminess than we were seeing earlier. We can still see that active Pacific jet stream really starts to get going here, and we're starting to see storm after storm just coming through. All right, and then some more storminess, maybe some snowstorms up into Canada. All right, but that's your jet stream right there, and it starts to kind of flatten out. So we might be dealing with just some cold air, just stationed near the United States, but we start to see more of a ridge starting to form here into portions of the eastern U.S. here. All right, so I think the eastern U.S. could actually end up being warmer than average for the first half of January. All right, but I have a hunch that we will be dealing with storminess, definitely in the west and the central U.S. And we'll talk about the the temperature anomalies in a bit. All right, but I do think that it'll get colder pretty soon. I think we're gonna get some storminess as well. All right, but that's already a big storm signal on the European model, which is one of our more reliable long-range models here. So, looking at now the North Atlantic Oscillation, also known as a negative NAO. All right, I'm showing you guys this just because we may enter this phase here, and this would actually favor a lot more cold air coming down through Canada here. This is the polar vortex up into Canada, and then flowing down into the northeast. All right, this is just a graphic I pulled off the internet. But you can see what we would be dealing with. We'd be dealing with a jet stream that'd be dipping here into the deep south, allowing for cold air to move in. All right, and this would be a big pattern setting up for the Northeast and the Midwest, where we'd be dealing with more snowstorms up there, because then we would get a blocking high here, just to the north of areas of Atlantic Canada and in Nova Scotia. This would be way up in the North Atlantic. All right, so where we see actually that ridging, that's all the way out, you know, off to the east of the eastern U.S. All right, so that's where we get the cold air flowing into the eastern U.S. So I'm just saying some of the models have been signaling that we could enter a negative NAO phase, and if we do, this is what we would be talking about here, and this would definitely favor more snowstorms in the east, and then maybe some warmer conditions in the west. Really depends on um, what the typical pattern is going to be, because again, this is just a signal on some models, and there's still a lot of disagreement out there on what's going to be happening midway through January, because that's the long term, and the long terms there's still some misinformation going around, which is leading to all the hype on these big snowstorms coming up. So we're looking at a big signal here on the GFS and the European model for a big storm system, and we're watching two storm systems now. We're tracking them as they get closer and closer to forecasting range. All right, we're watching the first one coming in right around January 2nd here, or January 4th. All right, here it is. We're getting to January 3rd. This is only 90 hours out, so we're getting pretty close to this time frame here, so we're really almost in that forecasting range. And we already got a Gulf flow starting to bring a lot of moisture and a lot of rainfall into the Gulf Coast. Watch as that moves up in the Northeast. We earlier, in the week, we were actually we were dealing with the GFS was actually showing a system moving up into the Southeast, taking more of like a landfall kind of track here. Not saying this is going to be a tropical system by all means, but a land more like a track like that. All right. But now the GFS is saying that this is going to stay off the coast and then become pulled into the Northeast. All right. So we got two different tracks coming up here, and so we still got a little bit of time here for this to change. We got a few days. All right, but the GFS is talking about a cold air, a big supply of cold air coming down behind this system. We've got two pieces of energy coming out. We've got one, maybe another clipper system coming in behind this. All right, and this is going to meet up with this Gulf flow, and that actually moves up into the Northeast, brings some isolated snow showers. And then we've been watching maybe a bomb cyclone for Nova Scotia. I definitely saw that big signal here yesterday on the GFS, and all the other major models have all been showing this becoming a bomb cyclone for Nova Scotia, bringing a lot of very heavy snowfall. But this could be a uh, winter weather storm system, if you want to put it that way, for the Northeast. I think we could definitely be dealing with some light snowfall. All right, it's very early to get into specifics with this. We're still gonna have to wait just a few more days, but I do think that this could bring some snowfall to the Northeast. All right, so I want to take a look at yesterday's 18Z to show you guys the difference in today's and yesterday's. This was yesterday's. We see that storm taking more of an inland track, but it's starting to see. You can see it's actually starting to tick more off to the coast. But we actually do see more rainfall inland, and then that moves into the Northeast. Again, that bomb cyclone for Nova Scotia. All right, but notice that second storm. We see pretty much the exact same kind of setup here. We get a Gulf flow. But then that rides up the coast, but does bring some precipitation here to the southeast. So that would be your second system that we're watching. All right, but you switch this back to today's 18Z, and the GFS wants a more widespread and bigger system, and so that moves up. This moves through the southeast. All right, we get some snow building up on top here. We've got cold air diving in through the system. All right, we've got a lot of cold air up north, and some of this cold air is being pulled in by that low pressure center here. All right, and this is 1,000 millibar low here. All right, and we're getting very heavy rainfall, maybe some severe weather definitely possible there in the southeast. We're not sure because this is still, about a week out. All right, but we're dealing with snow on the north side, impacting the Midwest. We got extremely heavy rainfall in the Gulf Coast. All right, and this storm continues to evolve, and we just got a very messy pattern here, with a lot of cold air hanging up north, a lot of warm air in the south. All right, but a lot of moisture hanging around, which is going to lead to a lot of snowfall here for the north, and definitely a ton of rainfall, just a complete washout for the southeast. This is that second storm system that we're watching here. All right, and that moves into the northeast, and this actually becomes interesting because this actually becomes a nor'easter kind of system, and this brings snow to southern New England and the northeast. All right, so that's where we see that we run into the model disagreement here, and so that's a big signal and telling you that this is just too far out to get into specifics. All right, but the latest GFS is bringing a weird scenario here, just based off the previous model guidance, and it wants more of a bigger system, and then it wants a potential nor'easter for uh, portions of New England and just southern New England, and then that moves on out. All right. So we're getting pretty far out. We're over 216 hours out. All right, but there has been big model agreement. I'm telling you guys, after January 8th, after really January 8th, January 9th, January 10th, there's been a big signal for not only a few big pushes of cold air and surges of cold air, if you want to put it that way, down into the Western U.S. All right, but there also has been a big signal on a big trough to dig in to the Western U.S. and a few, maybe, as of today, maybe multiple big storm systems that will form here in the central and then in the eastern U.S. All right, so we're basically midway through the run here. All right, so we can talk about maybe, if we're going to be talking about a winter storm or a rainstorm here. All right, but we definitely can't get any more specific than that. Other than that, we're just going to be talking about the signal for this. But this is January 8th here. We've got a 993 millibar low. We've already seen really a negatively tilted trough start to come up here to the central U.S. You got a lot of snowfall, though, building up on the north side. And at the same time, you guys, we have a big dip in the jet stream here, and that's due to a big cold blast coming down from Canada here. This is really when we're going to start to see the polar vortex come into play. All right, but we got a lot of very heavy snowfall impacting areas up to the north. More very heavy rainfall, maybe a severe weather event for the deep south once again. All right, that's going to be twice in a row with these storm systems here. And that cold air continues to try and get its way farther south, but we start to see a pretty nasty wintry setup starting to come up here from the northeast, and this just explodes out in the northeast. And 980 millibar low here, we're starting to see extreme rainfall moving into southern New England with, blizzard conditions in the north. This is, I mean, I don't want to get too specific. All right, I don't want to get into specifics here because we're talking about 264 hours out. This is just a big signal on the GFS and many other runs on this system that potentially is gonna cause a lot of big problems here. But on the latest GFS, we get a big washout and a big snowstorm for the eastern and central U.S. All right, that moves out, and that's a banger. But we've got more pieces of energy flying around, and anything that can connect here, and anything that just can, you know, can come, just with all the dynamics coming together, and we get that cold air source that's going to start to get up and going here. After January 12th, I really do think that there's going to be a big chance for some snowstorms and some pretty big rainstorms here for the central and eastern U.S. The western U.S., too, I think is going to stay active, especially with those temperature swings. But here we go, January 12th on the GFS. Here comes another system, another piece of energy. This is that original system that we were watching after the first two systems that we're tracking. This was it on the GFS yesterday. All right, but that system, this one right here, this one is completely new on the GFS. All right, because the GFS was talking about this one behind it, yesterday. So it's very confusing, guys, because there are so many different storm systems that we're going to be talking about now. All right, but we'll just get through this one here. January 12th, you've got a piece of energy with some snowfall flying around here in the Midwest, some rainfall again for the Southeast, another big heavy rainfall event. All right, and then you've got a piece of energy that's failing to do anything really here in the Southeast, ending this run of the GFS. All right, so you just saw a very active run of the GFS. We got about 4 bangers of a system here, just moving right through the United States here on the GFS. So the GFS is not the most reliable long range model. All right, but that was the latest signal on the GFS, and what we do here is we compare the models to see and try and figure out what is the best what is the best guess basically on what could happen in the long range. So that's why we move over to the European model here. We take a look at the European model to see if the GFS is alone on its signal here on both the systems, or if the models are lining up and agreeing on the systems. All right, but here comes the first system on the European model. We're getting into Wednesday, I believe, of next week. Okay, and here it is, that Gulf low. All right, it's bringing a lot of rainfall here through the Gulf. And then that basically does the same thing the GFS wants it to. It actually is positioned further south, so it doesn't want any inland rainfall other than the immediate coast here on the Gulf to really see any precipitation. But we do get some rainfall here on the Gulf Coast. That moves up in the northeast. All right, and that brings some snow. All right, to the northeast, but not as much as the GFS was wanting. That also becomes a bomb cyclone here for Nova Scotia. So that's a big signal for that. And I think that will actually happen. But here comes that second system. All right, here it is, and it actually, the European does agree with the GFS on that becoming more of a dynamic system rather than a Gulf piece of energy that rides through the Gulf Coast. All right, so it's trying to become a dynamic system. We can see it already happening because you got cold air falling behind it, warm air pretty much surging up in front of it. All right, so that's lining up to be a winter storm on top, and then maybe some a line of thunderstorms on the south side of it. But this falls apart and it gets caught up in that Pacific jet stream. All right, but that we'll see what happens after that because we're not done with the system. And it moves into the southeast and starts to ride up the coast, but it gets, it just, it doesn't move up in the northeast. All right, and that's what the GFS was showing as well. So there is some model agreement there, I would say, and I think the GFS was having this system evolving more than the European is. All right, but they're definitely agreeing on both systems kind of falling out to sea really somewhere near the Carolinas. All right, so those were your two systems that we're watching in the short to medium range. All right, but what's going to happen behind that? Well, the European it only goes out 240 hours, but the European also ends with a big system here. So this, I think, we're going to start to talk about. We're gonna start tracking it because we're definitely tracking those first two systems, but I think we're gonna start to include this one as your third system because we're seeing pretty big model agreement there because the GFS has continuously been showing a sign of this. It's been really just trying its best to tell everybody that something big is gonna happen, and the European is showing something like that as well here. By the way, the European is showing a massive cooldown here. I mean, this is just incredible how much cold air would be impact with the system. That just leads to more snow. And the European ends off tonight's run here with a maybe a severe thunderstorm event for the southeast here, but we definitely see a big winter storm for the Midwest with a lot of snowfall on the north side of that. All right, so very active times coming up. Big model agreement though on those first two systems. All right, and then this at what's going to be happening after that. We don't know. Again, we don't know the specifics because we're very far out. But all we do know is that there's a very likely chance that we will be dealing with at least one major storm system sometime after right around January 8th or after January 8th, or maybe both. All right, we really just got to figure this out. All right, but looking at the GFS for temperature anomalies, we want to know, you know, going in, we can go pretty far out with this. I would want to know. We want to just get head start on maybe just a guess on what form of precipitation these storms could be packed with. All right, so getting to that first time frame here of that first system, January 3rd. We've got the storm system really setting up here, right just south of Louisiana, and you've got pretty much some cold air here on the front side of it, and that's going to move with the system, and that actually kind of expands while the system is moving right into this region here. It's going to be moving from here. All right, it's going to be moving pretty much right through there. And it's got a pretty good environment for some snowfall. I think it's going to be very, very little. Okay, but if we can stay cold enough, I think we could be dealing with snowfall because the GFS here is showing uh more deepening here in this in these below average temperatures. We're getting to January 5th here. This is when the storm would be exiting the Carolinas, but we are seeing those deeper shades of blue and some pink starting to show up. We're getting to the 8 to 12 degree below our historical average range there, and that could definitely lead to some snowfall there for the southeast. All right, but we're getting to January 6th. We're kind of all over the place. We've got some warm air, all right, starting to come in through the central U.S., but both coasts are hanging on to cold air. This is when that second storm is going to start to come in because we turn this over, and here it is. Yep, that system that's trying to become dynamics, trying to become negatively tilted. All right, and so we go back to the anomalies here, and yeah, it's just this pattern here is really looking ugly. There's nothing that's looking very substantial, but the thing that we've been looking at, the thing that it's still in the long range, but I have a big feeling is going to happen is that big cool down, that widespread cool down, that I think is going to happen after January 10th. All right, so really getting into the second week of January, I think we're going to start to see a big cool down. But getting to January 9th, maybe where that third system could begin. Look at all this cold air, though, coming down here through the western U.S. We've got a cold air and warm air line right through the central U.S. Still some cold air in the northeast, though. All right, but that's not really going to do much because there's warm air is far more significant than that cold air back here in the northeast. But look at this. We've got cold air. That's plenty of cold air, a big cold air supply coming down from Canada. This would be coming down from Western Canada. All right, so GFS actually in support of the opposite of a negative NAO, so maybe a positive NAO. All right, we really just got to figure this out. Still, we don't know because this is 240 hours out. But if you look at the North American side of this, you can see that that cold air supply, it's still there. I mean, we've got even more significant below average temperatures there in up here into Western Canada, and this is where your polar vortex would be stronger. Your polar vortex at this point, if this were to be the pattern, your polar vortex would be moving off to the west, and that would definitely call for a big cool down in the western U.S. All right, so the flow of the cold air can move right down here in the south, to the south, without really any problems coming up. I'll switch my color to pink here, so you can see what I'm looking at. But I mean, this is a very favorable pattern for big snowstorms here, and just a lot of cold air that's going to be coming in continuously. So really, if we don't get any blocking there in front of that cold air stream, we could be dealing with widespread, well below average temperatures for a few days. All right, and we see if this pattern persists and we get to January 10th, January 11th, it's still there. The entire western U.S. is still well below average, but the east is still hanging on to some of that warmth. All right. But then we start to see more of that blocking start to come in, more of that ridging, which is strong, starts to come down from the north. All right, and that's going to really attack this cold air, and it pushes it down to the south. All right, and so that's when we get really to La La Land because we're getting all the way out to January 15th. But yeah, if we've been continuously seeing, I want to stress this enough, that we've been continuously seeing on the GFS and many other models. All right, that around January 8th we could get into this pattern, which could last maybe up to a week long, where we get a continuous stream of cold air, and I mean Arctic air, all right, from the Arctic blast, or the polar vortex, all right. And so this is just a big signal on the GFS that's been happening really every day now, that there will be a big cool down as we get deeper into January. But for the last part of the update, we look at our current projected snowfall totals, and I'm gonna start to say this really every video. The only reason we look at this is to look at the signal of, if we're gonna see above average snow in one region of the country or below average. We're not gonna be looking at how much snow we could see to January 15th at in your backyard. All right, that's not what we want to look at, because if we took this as a forecast, this would be so inaccurate that we'd probably see we'd probably see just this would be way off, basically, is what we're saying. All right. But the latest signal on the GFS, all right, is that we would be dealing with well above average snowfall here for let me switch my color, for the Eastern U.S. All right, we would definitely be dealing with well above average snow for the northern portion of the Eastern U.S. and then also above average snow for the West. So just above average snow all around here, for everybody out here in the United States. All right, so that's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for coming to watch. I'll see you guys in the next video. So, be ready. I think it's definitely going to get very active soon. All right, just be ready with that clipper system if you're in the way of that with some snowfall. But I think we will definitely get very active soon. We're going to start to see more cold air come in. I know December was actually maybe the warmest on record. All right, but I'm telling you guys, things will get active soon. All right, and things will get very cold soon. All right, so thank you all for joining me here on this Saturday night, and I'll see you guys in the next video.